Hopefully you had a chance to listen to Negotiating with Tiny Dictators, where I explain my completely unscientific 4B's parenting theory: bargaining, bribery, begging, and burnout. The first stage, bargaining, at least has some dignity to it. There's an implied negotiation. In an ideal world, bargaining means listening, understanding, and working with your child toward a solution. It sounds fairly reasonable. But after that stage, things tend to go downhill. Heels dig in, voices get louder, emotions escalate, anger intensifies, and dignity quietly slips out the back door. If you listened to that Fireside Story, you probably saw it play out over dishes that mysteriously never get done, timeouts that somehow become endurance contests, and those classic family moments, like a standoff in a parking lot where nobody is entirely sure what the original argument was about anymore. But this problem isn't isolated to parent-child relationships. It happens everywhere. In sports, they literally built rules around it. That's why basketball has technical fouls. Trust me on this one. I've received a few, both as player and as a coach. Hockey has the penalty box. Rugby has the sin bin. My daughter Jamie even managed to earn her first trip there recently. If you want that story, check out the space between doing fine and feeling wrong. Schools have detentions, suspensions, and expulsions. Workplaces have disciplinary processes and HR meetings. All systems designed around one simple truth: when emotions take over, good decisions tend to disappear. Well, last week it happened at our house, to all of us. One morning, Belinda woke up a little grumpy. It happens. At the same time, she was dealing with messages about our air conditioning not working and asking my advice on how to respond. Now, normally, Belinda is an excellent listener, but that morning she seemed distracted. I offered a few thoughts, which were mostly ignored, and the responses I got back were a bit short. Naturally, being the mature adult that I am, I handled this with patience and grace. Just kidding. I responded with equally short and snarky comments. Because when someone throws emotional fuel on the fire, apparently I occasionally grab the gas can. It wasn't until mid-morning that I received a text message explaining what had really happened. Belinda had woken up from a dream where I apparently wasn't being particularly nice to her. So before either of us had even finished our first coffee, we were already reacting to emotions from a fictional argument that had taken place entirely in her subconscious. Without communication, we both let emotions dictate our actions. Now you might think the story ends there, with a nice tidy moment of reflection and maturity. It does not. Because 2 days later, I managed to unnecessarily comment on her parking. Something along the lines of, "You're a bit over the line there." A completely unnecessary observation, one that served absolutely no purpose other than to remind everyone in the car that sometimes I struggle to leave well enough alone. Which meant that later that morning, I found myself sending my own mid-morning text. An apology. Turns out, emotional reactions aren't limited to early mornings and strange dreams. Sometimes they show up 2 days later, disguised as parking advice. And once again, emotions had quietly grabbed the steering wheel. Meanwhile, Jackson and Jamie had their own version of this playing out. It had been a long week for both of them. Jamie wasn't feeling great after 2 late weekend nights, including staying up to watch the Canada versus USA hockey game. Still disappointed about that one, by the way. If you want the full story, check out Sleep versus the Maple Leaf. On top of that, she had just started rehearsals for the middle school production. Jackson had his own packed schedule, late night rehearsals for the school's Kahani dance showcase, an evening basketball game, and a general lack of sleep that tends to turn teenagers into walking emotional experiments. By Saturday morning, they were both exhausted. And when people are exhausted, Emotions tend to drive the bus. Jackson needed new jeans. Simple enough task. The only problem? He didn't want to shop, and he made that very clear. I tried the reasonable parenting approach. Just suck it up, we're shopping. Shockingly, that strategy did not go well. Voices rose, frustration climbed, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized we had officially entered the later stages of the 4Bs. Burnout. So I did the only sensible thing left. I walked away. Sometimes space is the best parenting tool you have. The reality is that in busy lives, when everyone is tired, stressed, or running from one activity to the next, it becomes incredibly easy to let emotions dictate our actions. But almost every time we do, we end up somewhere we didn't intend to go. The argument gets bigger than the issue, the reaction becomes bigger than the moment. And later, when things calm down, everyone wonders why it escalated so quickly. Maybe the real lesson here isn't about parenting at all. Maybe it's simply this: emotions are great passengers, they're terrible drivers.